today I have a great guest, entrepreneur, and the marketing person for many, RG Enzon.
I'm actually an active duty sailor. I work full time for the United States Navy.
You also do software development and customization and automation and AI.
Essentially built my own marketing, branding, and software agency.
That's a lot of stuff. How do you manage?
At some point, like you could be like extremely successful, but there's gonna be a point you're gonna want to retire or be done with
I think AIs are better than people at this point.
it.
Okay, better than most people, not everyone.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Hello, welcome to Big Performance Podcast. My name is Alex Elish, and today I have a great guest, entrepreneur, and the marketing person for many, RG Enzon. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Alex. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Glad to be here.
It's interesting to hear how you define what you do because you do a lot of stuff. When I was researching you for the podcast, I'm like, oh, this is kind of a lot. How do I define? Would I define? I will not. So tell us what you do.
Thank you. So right now I'm actually an active duty sailor. I work full time for the United States Navy, obviously military stuff. And then I'm on the side. I have a very big passion with helping people and ultimately around marketing, technology, automations, AI, and what have you. And essentially, even before joining the Navy, I was already very well passionate about technology. And I essentially built my own marketing, branding, and software agency. And it's called Enzon Media. And basically, our focus is to help and educate military veterans and also helping local businesses implement and integrate their digital marketing tools into their local brick and mortar businesses so that we can help them scale organically without hiring expensive in-house developers and staff.
That's a lot. My first idea when I visited your website, I'm like, oh, I saw the podcast. He was talking about he was not talking about like a big team, but I see the website for a full cycle marketing agency. I'm like, oh, how do you manage that? And now I get to know that you also provide software to those businesses. So this is even bigger than just full scale marketing. You also do software development and customization and automation and AI. That's a lot of stuff. How do you manage?
I think the biggest thing for me is managing it on like I guess a 30-foot overview instead of me doing it myself. Because you can educate yourself by like hiring a mentor, for example, or joining masterminds around those topics, or going through school, doing courses on the side, and what have you. But I think the biggest thing for me is learning who to hire and how to manage those kind of projects that ultimately become solution that helps your target market.
What's your price point? Are you always confident that you can find a person that matches to the demand and will work from the get go? So sometimes you need to pick several people for a project. So you need to manage client expectations and the budget and your hiring and like quality as well at the same time.
That's a great question. I think so price point wise, we typically would start at around $200 per month for the softwares. And we have a couple of softwares that we use and integrate to local businesses, digital marketing stuff and automation. And we go from $200 per month for just having access to the software. And it's ultimately a do it yourself kind of solution. And we go to up to like 10 grand for a project. And a project to us would essentially be starting your website, launching it, adding automations, integrating AI onto it, and basically having it become your marketing machine. Because I see a lot of like businesses, sure they may have a website, but it's not systemized enough to where you're still doing a lot of manual work. And what I mean by that is, as an example, like a lot of businesses, right, even right now, and we're in 2024, um, they would have just a simple brochure site, and then let's say you're trying to connect with them. Typically, what is included for as a solution is just a contact form, right? But
Hmm.
you can integrate simple chatbot. You can connect that to an AI, and that would help you become more faster with connecting with those prospects or your current customers.
I get it. Yeah, in our practice, I changed the whole back end of the business. Uh, when I saw this tendency of forgotten websites, we started as a website building company. We are building websites for the clients. The websites are super pretty. They're they're effective in selling, but when we ship the product, the website is not in our hands anymore. And sometimes in a few months, we come to the website and it is like a scene from Godfather. What did they do to my son?
Yeah, yeah,
Because yes, we work on a software that is easy to manage. We did have a call where we say, hey, this is how you edit. This is, you copy this block. The block is already prepared for you. You do not create new block. Here is the template that
yep,
you take and you put in the place. No, we will put
yep.
Times New Roman title
Oh
in
God.
stupid color that never been in the in near this brand in their life. So we saw like, oh, our value works until we leave the project, really. So we changed
Yep,
stuff around. So now we are closer to what you're saying about making the website a useful tool for the business by being there and saying, here is the process that we can implement. Here's how we leverage generative AI and make you like different kinds of landing pages so that your advertising becomes more effective. So yeah, I hate leaving the clients to fend off for themselves with a
yeah,
website. Like it's just a piece of technology. Yes, it's
yep,
pretty. Yes, you can share a link, but if your arsenal ends there, we're in trouble.
yeah. And I like to think, like it should become. I like what you said, that it should be. It is a tool to help you market your business, but if it's not doing that effectively, like it's not really a good investment of anybody's time, energy, and especially money. Because what it's essentially just an online poster, if it's
Yeah,
not doing anything.
many would think that they got this online poster, and then after they finished with the website, they will just send paid traffic over. But No, it's the beginning. How
Yes.
there is like a lot of people who are competing for that paid traffic. So being the best at receiving the traffic is one of the goals of the website in this scenario, but not many keep that in mind, in my opinion, when it comes to small businesses. And I really like that you are defining your audience as ex-military and local businesses. What is your ideal client?
To me, my ideal client is somebody who either owns a business already and they see that there's frustrations and improvements that needs to be done, but they just don't know how to approach it, or they know how to approach it but they don't have the time and the hiring know-how, or even like the management portion of like after you hire, in order for them to actually get the results that they're looking for. And also, my my one of my dream audience, my dream clients are essentially people who are, you know, wanting to start their business with capital. Very important, because a lot of people want to start a business, but when it's time to for them to actually invest into their business, they're like, oh, like I don't really have that and all that stuff, and then they start looking for the free stuff, which is all good, but um, when you're looking to scale, you either have to have a lot of time, and we all have that in the beginning, or you have the capital to invest onto your business. That way, you just become the face of the business instead of you doing the behind the scenes on your business. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. The capital does help you move faster.
Yeah.
When you go into the business with limited budget, when I'm saying limited, yeah, any budget is limited budget. But with small business, you cannot go um, optimally fast most of the time. Uh, what will happen? You start accruing some kind of debt. If you are growing all right with the number of customers that you have, you invest in that front. You might be getting the technology debt. So at some point, when you have one too many customers, your systems will fail. So there is like the technology debt. There is, there might be um, HR issues. So are you hiring fast enough for the level of your service that you advertise to your newfound customers is the same one that you sold them onto?
Yep. And like it's not always all about hiring too for me. It's all about figuring out what things can you automate, for example. What things are there that are like very repetitive, to the point that like, do you already have SOPs, systems, and all that stuff set up? Because like at the end of the day, at some point, like you could be like extremely successful, but there's gonna be a point in our careers where you're going to want to retire or be done with it. And when that point comes, are you ready to exit your business? And a huge part of the exit of the business, in order for you to be able to exit, like, I don't know, like, let's say like 5x the current value, for example, like, is it systemized enough that it's not revolving around you as the business owner? And is it something that is the process something that is
Define
somebody.
SOPs.
So it could be just anything, right? So let's say, all right, so let's say it's just all about I'm gonna start with something so simple. For example, when you when you respond to reviews, right? So typically, if you're a small business, you probably won't have any kind of staff that would respond to those reviews, right? And how do you handle that kind of feedback? So, for example, if it's negative, how do you go about responding to that? Do you, like, do you fight over the negative criticism that you receive? Or, like, would you be willing to, like, try to, like, fix that issue with your client or customers in a sense that you can turn that negative experience into a positive one, and like
Mm-hmm.
usually as you start, it's all in your head, you know, like a lot of like the things that you're doing is usually in your head. So how do you transfer that on paper, for example? That way, as you expand, um, and then let's just say you hire somebody for managing your online reputation. How do you ensure that one, they speak the same brand voice, two, that they are able to help in a level that you know that you're able to help them, your customer, and like is that something that that person that you hired is able to do without
Correct.
you, having that kind of oversight? Because like what as you do more oversight um on your staff, that essentially takes away from you becoming the face of your business, or you responding to like it could be like pre-sales, or you could be on board like helping with the onboarding process of a new client, but you're not able to because you have to spend time training somebody when you could have already have an SOP set up. And when I say SOP, it doesn't need to be like checklist. It could just be you recording your process, your thought process, and handing that over to somebody you hired. That way they can kind of see how you operate. And it's kind of more of like an over the shoulder kind of training, but instead of you doing it repetitively, it's already, double quote systemized because you already have a video library, for example, of how you do things.
Mm-hmm. I was oblivious to this kind of processes, and now I love it. I love it because the majority of my hiring goes to AI agents, and those things do not work if I did not define clearly what the purpose is. I did not provide them with clearly defined role, told them where in the business process they are, and then provided the examples of good work. When I have all that, I have a brilliant employee. And this is a great feeling when there is the piece of automation that is smart enough and it has been integrated within your processes. Yeah, I think AIs are better than people at this point. Okay, better than most people, not everyone.
Yeah, I love that.
Right, let's imagine that there is a brilliant actor, but the only motivation of this actor is to perform as RG. They are as handsome as you, they are as smart as you, and they want to perform a day from a life of RG. They are interested in stuff that you're interested in. So can you lead us through a day of your life? Because that's an interesting combination of you being an entrepreneur and then working for the military at the same time and managing everything, and where you even get all the time to do it. So yeah, what's the day in your life?
Yeah, so oh, that is a very very interesting scenario to have. Um, but I think for me, well, that person would typically also be awake already at like 5 in the morning. Um, and that's regard it's like the days would be irrelevant. Like it can be a weekend and I would still wake up at the same time. It's not because I'm a very productive, at all times kind of person, but it's more of this, I guess, kind of like PTSD because I still have a 9 to 5 job. And then
Yeah.
but essentially, before I get to work, I pretty much already would have things that I've thought about that I know that I need to get done, and I would essentially just write down list of things, and then from there I would see, all right, which ones of these are something that I can delegate to my staff, and which ones of these can I delegate or do myself, and where I can set up some kind of automation, and which are these are like the absolute critical things that I need to be the one doing, and then from there, um, I would typically just go about my day. And then as far as like prospecting and all that stuff, I typically would sit down and then do some kind of like deep work, folks work. And let's say I would sit down for like 30 minutes to an hour and then just plan my content for like a full month, you know? And this could be, and then I like to think of content to where it's not all monotonous, where, so let's say you're doing business stuff, like, and it's not just all about profits or topics revolving around profits, it can
Hmm.
just, it can also be around, like funny things about being a business owner, failures that you can share, some kind of like journey, kind of like story. It could be some quotes that inspired you. It could be somewhere about the why, like why you started that business, and you would share a little bit about your personal journey. It could be something even a little bit more irrelevant, but just to kind of like break the ice, like if you saw something funny that you want to share, so I would plan something like that. And then I call this like my content buckets, right? And then would sit there, and then my process is very archaic, to a sense that like I literally would just pull up Google Sheets, and then I just have Monday through Sunday, for example, and then I would have it to like, all right, this day this is your topic, and then go from there.
Hmm.
So I would, that's typically what I would do, and not just for me, but like any businesses that we've worked with so far, that the office that hired us to do their content marketing portion.
All
And
right.
I
So
would also,
what we have so far, you wake up at 5, do the planning session, then you have 9 to 5 job. After 9 is the this brainstorming and doing content buckets after 9 to 5. Is that evening already?
yep.
What happened during the workday? What did you do? Do you work in the office? Do you work straight on the ship? Do you like uh, zip line your way across from your house to your job? What is it for you?
um I mean, it's just a regular drive really to, like the base that you're attached to. And right now I'm pretty lucky that I'm not attached to a ship, so I don't go to work on a ship, but I'm just basically in a building. And like my job in the Navy is all about payroll, HR, and all that stuff. And a lot of the things that we do are easily transferable in the civilian world, because For example, like setting up policies, structures, and guidance that we set out to the command. That's something that I do in my job, and that's, I guess, like that's kind of like where I had built kind of like the mentality I had that, like, all right, if there's no proper process, how do we establish one? Because like that's day in and day out what we do, and what we continuously do training on. And I guess you could say, like while I'm still on the at the building that I work out of, for my 9 to 5 job, um, I can kind of like think about, all right, like what can I do after that 9 to 5? Like, so
Yeah.
kind of like looking forward to the time when you're done with the 9 to 5, and essentially trying to squeeze um as much productive things you can do, because you're already, like you already lost a good amount of time, because you're at your 9 to 5.
Yeah, I get it. Do you have a moment to unwind at your job? Like, what do you do? Usual office people do water cooler conversations. They do smoking breaks. What is it for military? Is there like more chill? Like in startups, we have couches and everyone is like can have their 20-minute chill or thinking over stuff.
I want to say it depends on like the workload and the kind of leadership that you have, because like even like on the civilian side, you're always gonna have, the good kind of leadership and also the toxic ones. So it translates easily in the military, and to me, the way I unwind is essentially just stepping away from the computer, and it's as simple as like literally just going out of the building and probably just walk around that our building, just to kind of like get myself out of that environment where like you're so focused on doing your job that you kind of don't get some kind of like fresh air, for example. And to me personally, when I see trees, like that kind of like helps me kind of like calm down, I guess. And I love being in the ocean. So being in the Navy, you're basically around the ocean. So
Yeah,
it's as simple as stepping away from the building, because like the way our building is set up is like you leave that building and then you literally can see the ocean. So I would step out and then just pretty much go by the ocean and just kind of like look there, and I guess practice some mindfulness. And I'm not really big on like thinking. I'm more of like finding things that I can take action on and then implement it when I get the chance to.
mm. I see this relationship between your administrative job at military and the muscles that you develop to be handling a complex operation of a marketing team. All right, cool. And after your job, you stand up from the computer at your work, drive home, get to the computer at home to do the productive stuff. And then you already distributed the tasks in the morning. So do you check on your team and in that moment, or this part of your workload is automated somehow?
Um, some of it are already like systemized and automated, so which is really good because it frees up your time. But as far as like checking up on the staff, I don't really check in because they typically would be the ones who self starts and like notifies me, for example, like, hey, I'm done with the task force that you have. These are the issues that I've encountered, and these are the things that I was able to accomplish. So I'm very set on ensuring that I'm not the one checking in, because to me that is a waste of time. Especially, having a
Mm-hmm.
9 to 5 job, you essentially don't have the full 24 hours a normal small business owner or an entrepreneur would have. Because like at the end of the day, while you're on that 9 to 5, you're very focused on that one. Um, and to me, it's more of like how, like I guess you can call it lucky, but also at the same time, when you kind of like build that kind of like communication and like courage to let people know about your expectations, then they can either go about that or not be part of the team. So to me, like I
This
like
is
that
a
kind
very,
of
very
people.
militaristic approach. You either do
Yeah,
the correct thing or you do not work with us anymore. I love
yeah,
it.
because like yeah, because like at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are hungry to learn, hungry to earn money. Um, but if you're being a time suck or like an energy suck in general, that's not really a very useful way for me to utilize my time, because I know that I will be providing you training. I will be like helping you grow, because I'm like based on my background, being in the military, for example, as you said, it's very military to like do it, kind of deal. Like you're just always on the go. But also I have background in doing agency stuff and like coding, for example, and what have you.
All right. I want to invite you for a coaching kind of exercise. So I have 4 questions and we will go through them with you. Uh, RG, what do you want to improve? What is the current thing that you want to improve in your life or in work life?
Um, we were just talking about this earlier, like like the kind of like military mentality, like do it or don't, or
Yeah.
basically get the fuck out, kind of deal. And to me, I think I want to learn how to kind of like slow down, because like my personality and like part of like a big part of me is like when you do things, sorry, when you think about doing things, you just keep going, and I want to learn how I can, for example, slow down, take a step back, and be like, all right, like think of this more instead of you just taking action on stuff.
Why do you want to do it? How will it improve your life or your relationships?
I think it would help relieve pressure on both ends, because like for example, like my brain, like it thinks about a lot of stuff, and typically it's just go 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 until it's like nighttime and I'm ready for bed. So, and when you're on that go mode, you just keep on doing instead of like reflecting. So to me that would help, because I would be able to kind of like have more insight than just being in the weeds of doing stuff.
Hmm. So you anticipated improving your leadership and at the same time agency over your life because you have the oversight as well as hands-on doing stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm. All right. What will you need to sacrifice to get better in that?
That is a very heavy question. I love
Well, really,
it.
there is nothing free in this world.
Yeah,
You know
definitely.
that, like, if you want to build a company, you need either a lot of energy and time, or you need the budget. Which one
Yeah.
that you're spending? It's with everything.
I think like it's more of like allocating time out of your day to actually take a step back and figure out, all right, how do I make sure I don't fall into the same trap? And honestly, like to me, it would be possibly like hiring a mentor, um, that can help me with that kind of mentality and thinking.
Hmm.
So I guess the trade off for me is investment of time and money. That way you can hire somebody to kind of like fast track you to be that kind of person or leader that you want to be.
Awesome. That is great. So how you're going to achieve this is a smart way. You are going uh, into a mentorship relationship with a person that has the knowledge. This is like a cool fast track to doing anything and learning new skill. People think that, oh, to pick up a new skill, I need to study for several years. Or you can get a mentor that already has the skill to provide it to you. Awesome. I think it's a great insight for many people, that sometimes it's so valuable for us to wind down and see our life from a more agent's perspective, saying, "Oh, is this what I'm gonna do? Is this that I choose to be doing in this particular scenario?" Cool, awesome, RG. Thank you for sharing this insight with us. It was
Thank
great
you.
talking. Let's keep in touch. We are marketing agency bros after all.
It's a lot of ups and downs, huh?
Hmm. Alrighty. Talk to you.
Later. Thank you, man.